Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we are still studying the book of Hosea, and we're in chapter 9. This is part of our larger study of the writing prophets who wrote to the northern kingdom. And we're in that part where God is talking about the faithlessness of his people and describes himself as he has in the life of Hosea as the jilted husband whose wife has repeatedly committed adultery and with multiple partners, but he still loves her. And so there's all the pain, all the regret, all the anger, and and the anger started to be vented again in chapter 8. Chapter 9 is so rough. Chapters 9 and 10 are just the venting of that anger. And then in chapter 11 we get the love and the tenderness and God opening his heart up to us like he does no place else in scripture. But chapter 9 is rough. Um and in chapters 9 and 10 we're going to be taken back to Gibeah. When you hear Gibeah, we are being reminded of the last event in the book of Judges, which is the rape and dismemberment of the Levite's concubine, which is the awfulest thing that you'll read in Scripture and one of the most awful things you'll read anywhere. It is an episode that involves rape, that involves murder, that involves dismemberment, that involves genocide, that involves the mass um, kidnapping of young women, and it's all there. And Jews did it to Jews because there was no king in Israel, and people did whatever they wanted to do. So God is going to be recalling that episode, the awfulness of it, the violence of it, the sexual violence of it, and as and he uses it in many ways to describe their situation. Okay, we're just going to be looking at chapter 9, verses 1 through 9 right now. Do not rejoice, O Israel, with exultation like the nations, for you have played the harlot, forsaking your God. You have loved harlot's earnings on every threshing floor. Threshing floor and winepress will not feed them, and the new wine will fail them. They will not remain in the Lord's land. But if Ephraim will return to Egypt, and in Assyria they will eat unclean food. They will not pour out libations of wine to the Lord. Their sacrifices will not please him. Their bread will be like mourners' bread. All who eat of it will be defiled. Their bread will be for themselves alone. It will not enter the house of the Lord. What will you do on the day of the appointed festival and on the day of the feast of the Lord? For behold, they will go because of destruction. Egypt will gather them up. Memphis will bury them. Weeds will take over their treasures of silver. Thorns will be in their tents. The days of punishment have come. The days of retribution have come. Let Israel know this. The prophet is a fool. The inspired man is demented because of the grossness of your iniquity and because your hostility is so great. Ephraim was a watchman, and my God a prophet, yet a snare of a bird catcher is in all his ways. There is only hostility in the house of his God. They have gone deep in depravity, as in the days of Gibeah. He will remember their sins. He will punish their sins. This is rough. Um, there's just so much here in these 9 verses. Remember that we've said the prophet is writing to Israel in times when times are good. They feel a sense of security, like they have a strong army. God's mentioned that in the last chapter. I've strengthened your arms, and He's going to mention it later on. You're trusting in your military. You can forget that. But times are good. They feel secure. The money is really good. Amos makes that point. The great amount of prosperity they are enjoying. But as God has said in the previous chapter, chapter 7, their destruction is already happening and they don't even know it. You have loved harlot's earnings on every threshing floor. He's just said You're the prostitute on threshing day who just goes to threshing day and sells herself to every man there. That's who you are. It's awful. It's rough what he says. Um, and then he says, "This the things that you think you have, you don't have it. You're going to go hungry. You're going to go thirsty. You're not going to sleep on good beds. You're not going to have houses. You're going to have tents. Your tents are going to be filled with thorns. The bread that you have is mourner's bread. Mourner's bread meaning, uh, you know, um, mourners who have had something to do with a corpse have then touched the bread and made it defiled, and anyone who touches it or eats it is thereby defiled. You're that. That's the bread that you have, and that's who you are. You're the one who is defiled and who defiles others. And the day of punishment, the day of retribution, that's come. You need to know this. It's unclear whether their prophets are fools or whether they're calling true prophets fools. But I think we get the picture of this, um, and the whole idea of the bird catcher catching a bird in a snare. He's mentioned that several times in these last three chapters. And then in verse 9, he's going to mention Gibeah several times in the next couple of chapters. But Gibeah, they have gone deep in depravity as in the days of Gibeah. So in verse 1, they are the prostitutes. In verse 9, they are the rapists and the kidnappers. Those, I mean, they are the um, sexual predators. They are the sexual offenders. That's how deep in depravity they have gone, and therefore they are going to be punished, and it's already starting to happen. And of course, it will happen. I mean, they're going to be over with in 2 decades. By the end of by the end of 20 years, there will not be a northern kingdom. Everything God has promised is going to happen in that generation. So, okay, he has more. We're going to have a couple of chapters of God venting His anger and promising their punishment. We'll pick up with verse 10 of chapter 9 next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.